Welcome to Real Estate Real Talk with me, Skyleigh. I'm a realtor, coach, and founder of Forever Kamloops and Forever Florida Real Estate Groups and the creator of Elevation Real Estate, the realtor coaching platform. After nearly a decade in this industry, I've built a business that gives me more freedom, more income, and more time with the people I love. And now I'm here to help other realtors do the same. This podcast is for agents who want to build a thriving real estate business without burning out. We talk about scaling smart and building systems so you can buy back your life, because life shouldn't feel like all work and no play. And if you're a buyer or seller tuning in, consider this your backstage pass. You'll hear unfiltered conversations with top agents and industry pros, giving you the same insights we share behind closed doors. Knowledge is power, and the more you know, the better you can advocate for yourself and work with someone who truly has your back. Let's get real. Okay, I'm sitting here today with Rob Marucci, and this is going to be fun, the economic conversation. We just had a little bit of a debrief. You are based out of Connecticut, and I'm happy to have learned a little bit about the weather there. I can't believe that you are suffering over there in comparison to everybody else. Everyone else seems to have a better winter this year than you do, which I'm so sorry to hear about.
It's probably been the worst winter we've had in about 20 years, I would say.
That's crazy. Everyone else seems to be like enjoying a very mild winter. So you got the eye of the storm, apparently. Is it affecting real estate over in Connecticut then? Is everybody like bundling up and not wanting to go outside because it's so different than what it normally is, or?
So it definitely affects the listing side of real estate. No one wants to put their home on the market when there's 20 inches of snow outside. It's hard to get your property prepped and ready with all the snow. But there are the people that do have their houses on the market. It's still good. Buyers still want to go see because inventory's been so low.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is that there's a number of people that I have met in the States. And if you're not well-traveled, there's a number of people that I've met that make jokes about like people in Canada being like Eskimos and like living in igloos and stuff like that. And it sounds like you're the one living in an igloo this year. And yeah, I actually have no snow on the ground. It's wild. But either way, you were mentioning to me earlier about the number of investment properties that you have that you're dealing with snow removal for. Getting back into the podcast and why we are here today is that I wanted to chat with you about your experience with being an investor, getting into real estate, and how you've been able to use your background with like economics, because you said you graduated with an economics degree, and how that's all like full circled into you having your own brokerage now, which is super awesome. To start from the beginning, can you give me a little bit of a background as to how you got into real estate and like why that happened? I feel like it's always such a fun story.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. It was back in like 2007, graduated college a few years earlier, started reading a bunch of books. The one that sticks out to me is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which probably is the number one selling business book of all time.
Yeah.
That really got me to change my mindset from just being an employee to, hey, I got to do something else. And investing really caught my eye in real estate. So in 2007, I started with a business partner. I wanted to buy multifamily properties. It was probably the worst time ever to start buying because we bought 3 properties right away within a year. And then the market crashed. So we all know what happened in 2007, 2008. However, I held on to those properties and I learned a lot from it. And when I was searching for those properties, we found the properties. We drove by them. We walked the properties alone. And then we had to call a real estate agent. And I'm like, well, why don't we become realtors?
Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed finding my own properties. So that was right in the beginning. The first 3 properties took me probably 13 years before they were profitable.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I love that though, because then there's so many people who want this instant gratification. And I'm like, that's not the game you're playing. It's not the game. No. So I'm happy to hear somebody echo that it's long-term hold is the way to go. And that 13 years, like you held on. I like it.
Absolutely. And then I quit my day-to-day job. I was a manager at Target for 10 years. I quit that and opened up a real estate brokerage. And now we built that up to about 30 agents. And every aspect of real estate is a passion of mine.
Very cool. So even your management experience at Target and stuff, that's probably extremely valuable for running your team and brokerage. Like managing people is really hard. I didn't realize how hard it is. And
Yes.
yeah, I have had a team for a number of years, and it grew. I think the most agents that I ever had was about, there was 10 of us total at one point, and it's hard managing people. So kudos to you for having a large group of people that you manage and still have your investment properties and all of that kind of stuff. It's a struggle.
Yes, it's challenging, and it's also very enjoyable to be able to have that camaraderie and teamwork, and everybody's always bouncing ideas because you know how this industry changes day to day, week to
Mm-hmm.
week, and there's always something new popping up in the industry.
Yeah, I think that the culture has been the biggest learning curve for me. Like when I first started growing my team, I didn't really think anything like that. And then as I've been growing and learning and all of that stuff, I realized that the culture is super, super important. So you must have a really good culture. And like you said, like the camaraderie and like everyone just like working together sounds so good and nice, especially when the market is like a little bit volatile and all the things that are happening in the economy and all that stuff. Going back to the economy, because you have a background in economics, I wanted to touch base with you on this because it's not something, as I mentioned, that I really understood when I got into real estate, how the economy really affects like the real estate market and supply and demand, and how what happens in the political world really like affects our business. And so I'm curious to know how having your background in economics has helped you in business, because I do think that it probably did something for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I actually went into economics because, like most young people at college, they don't really know what they're doing necessarily when
Yeah.
they get to school. And I went to a job fair. I remember this job fair, and almost every single station was like finance. They were accepting finance majors in economics. Then there was accounting majors, and then it said economics. So it is a broad spectrum of obviously of the entire economy, and it gives you insight into every single aspect of business. For real estate, I think it absolutely helps understanding where the government plays a major role in almost every aspect of real estate. Right now, the biggest aspect is the mortgage rates. So what they're doing, it's great to understand that how they lower their interest rates, so like a snowball effect for the mortgage interest rates to come down. And I actually think that the government is doing a pretty nice job of lowering them slowly and not doing anything drastic right now, as they've done in the past. And people are getting used to the 6% interest rates, the 6.5% interest rates. Now I just heard that there's 5.99% interest rates in the US, which is a little bit more healthy than the eights and sevens that we've seen.
Yeah.
Back to your question on economics, it really, the government has so much power and control over the economy. And just by these little changes that they make really affect how our industry, how many listings there are, how many buyers there are, how many people can afford a home. So understanding the back end of it does help. And it's good to explain to your team and your buyers and sellers of what's going on in the background of why your house is going up so fast or the values are coming down.
Yeah. Yeah, just being able to have the like intelligent conversation around why things are the way that they are. I don't know if all not everybody in any industry is built equally, but
Yeah.
being able to actually have the dialogue to explain why things are the way that they are and like how it affects human behavior, which ultimately affects like the real estate market and the prices and all of that stuff, I think is like really important. So for anybody who's listening, if you've not looked into economics and like how that actually like, affects like our industry, like it's really important to know. And I did want to ask you about how you feel the 40-year mortgage that Trump announced is going to affect the market in the States. Because we had a little bit of a conversation about this, that like Canada does not have the length of mortgages that you guys have there. So I feel like there's pros and cons on each side, which I think would be fun for us to chat about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's always pros and cons. So the pro here is a 40-year mortgage is going to make it more affordable for a lot of Americans to actually purchase a home. So it all comes down to, I'm not a mortgage broker, but I do understand the industry. It all comes down to debt to income.
Mm-hmm.
Now people are increasing the amount of payment that they can pay because it's amortized over 40 years. So before, if they could afford a $2,000 a month mortgage, now if you add another 10 years, now they could afford, say, a $2,200 or $2,300 mortgage, which every $10,000 to $20,000 is probably $100 in payment. So it really opens up the amount of buyers in the market. So people that can afford it. So I think that's great. It's going to help out with, there's more buyers. We're going to have more sales. I think it's great. The big con is that people might not necessarily be able to afford a home. And just because the mortgage company is allowing them the ability to purchase, if something goes wrong down the road, it can have financial consequences for sure.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing you had said earlier is that just because you have an extra $100 or a couple $100 a month savings because of this new 40-year mortgage, the likelihood is that you're not going to be like putting that $100 or $200 into a savings account. No, you're just going to finance the largest house that you can. And it's sad because so many people are just like keeping up with the Jones mentality. They're wanting to have all the big shiny things. They're not preparing for retirement. And while the whole idea behind it is to keep some payments lower because again, people are struggling and the cost of living so expensive, but then they're not actually utilizing it that way. There's another book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Yes, that one is like way
That's
up there. But the other one that is like such a good book, and I think that most people have read it, but maybe need to reread again, would be The Wealthy Barber.
Okay.
And that one talks about paying yourself first. And every time you get a paycheck, saving some money. And that even if you're young, you shouldn't be putting like all of your money into fun toys and like your house and like all of this stuff. Like you should be like putting some money away because you just never know. So it's a good conversation for us to have that this 40-year mortgage is like, yes,
Yes, be careful.
it
So
could be
when I
good
first,
if you use it
yeah,
right.
absolutely. Like I said, more people are going to be able to afford a mortgage now if that starts taking off. But quick little story, 2007, when I first purchased, I remember there was no documentation loans. There was credit was really easy to get. And I remember my mortgage broker was like, yeah, you could afford this house. You're approved. I did the math on my own, and I think I would have had about $50 left over for food and living expenses. But they were going to approve me for this $300,000 house. And I'm like, I absolutely cannot afford that, but you're telling me I can because anybody can get a mortgage back then. So I do worry. And then everybody knows what happened in 2008, 2009. The whole economy crashed, worst crash since the 30s. So I worry that things like the 40-year mortgage are just things that are going to create another crash. So they're already doing no document loans now again. So you can find where you don't have to document your income. You're going to pay a lot higher interest rate, but still, I could say, I make $1 million a year. As long as I have 20% down and I'm willing to pay 10% interest, they'll give me a loan. So those are the things that I worry about when they're coming up with these different loans and longer terms that were.
Yeah, no kidding. And then inevitably what would happen too would be the foreclosures and everything eventually are just going to blow up and but as long as people are smart with their stuff. So hopefully they do some research and instead of strapping themselves to the highest payment possible, because it's just not worth it. I don't know, the stress. We already have enough stress in our lives. We don't need to strap ourselves even more to more stress and payments.
Yeah, if buyers out there are renting right now and this 40-year mortgage allows them to get into a good investment that they can build some equity, it's a great program. I 100% believe that buying is better than renting for your financial future. So if you utilize it the right way, it can be a pro. It can be great for you. It's just if you're not disciplined and you don't make the right financial decisions, it can hurt some people for sure.
Talking about making good financial decisions and you being in the investor world, I think that it's super smart to have your money on, I'm talking about rich dad, poor dad, that side of the quadrant. Money making money for you, which is amazing. You said that you really enjoy working with investors. I also really like working with investors just because you know what. So give me an idea of advice that you give to investors, or even if somebody is in real estate working with buyers and sellers right now, if they wanted to start working with investors, like what advice would you give to them getting in and finding investor clients?
Absolutely. So you have to make sure you are an expert in what you do. So if you are trying to work with investors, you have to understand what makes a property a good investment. Make sure you know what the ROI is on properties, how to calculate it, and make sure, I believe that you have to be an investor yourself to really be an expert. So for me, I own 10 rental properties and I've learned all the ins and outs of it. I've made all the mistakes of buying too high or buying a property that needs too much work. So really understanding how real estate works when it comes to investing is the number one thing. And there's so many tools out there now with this AI and ChatGPT. You can create spreadsheets and make yourself more of an expert than ever. But really, you need to understand what makes a good investment and also understand the different investments out there. Some multifamilies have great cash flow, but it also comes with a lot of turnover, a lot of headaches. So you have to make sure you're able to explain this to your potential investors and buyers. And then a big thing for a real estate agent working with investors, you got to know where to find the investments. It's not that easy anymore. You can't just go online in the MLS and there's 20 different properties. You have to get creative and you have to know different websites. There's not the foreclosure sites anymore like they used to. So you have to maybe go door to door and dig in government records and files to see if there are any potential foreclosures coming up. So you have to be aggressive.
Yeah.
If you're going to work with an investor.
I like that advice though about like knowing where to find the investment properties, because full circle back to like economics, everything is supply and demand. If something has a really high demand and there's little supply, people are going to end up paying more money for it. So if you can be that person that's going to go and find these investment opportunities that are not open to the public, then you're going to be getting a better price than the ones that everybody else already sees and might be like chomping at the bit to get. Yeah, those opportunities for off-market listings or like off-market opportunities and like where to find those, I think are going to be really important for people. Like door knocking has come back substantially, which I feel like is really good for people who want to work with investors as well, because they do want like boots on the ground, like people going and finding opportunities for them. So yeah, where else do you think that good investment opportunities come up? Because you said that the foreclosure kind of database isn't existing anymore, which I didn't know. We actually don't have one here in Canada, but I knew you guys had one in the States. So where do people find foreclosure opportunities, or even like the people who might want their mortgages to be assumed in the States now?
Yeah, so there are still the foreclosure sites. It's just they're very minimal foreclosures on the market, because anybody that is in foreclosure, if they bought the property within the last 5 years or more, they have equity, so they're able to sell. So the foreclosures there's not many of them, but I do feel like agents need to keep an eye out. Foreclosures potentially can start to increase because anybody that's bought in the last 5 years, if they have financial hardship, they could make a comeback. Hopefully they don't, but they could. I have an agent who works with a client who does a lot of tax liens. So he goes to tax auctions. They're every single week. Yeah, in Connecticut, they're every single week. There's a list of them. I see anywhere from 5 to 20 a week all over the state. And people actually go and there's an auction at these tax auctions.
Wow.
So you need to work with an agent that understands this, because out of the 20 that there are, probably 15 of them the night before get canceled because the bank will send in to buy the property. So you don't want to drive around. On Thursday, there was 20 properties, and on Friday night, there's only 15. So you want to make sure your agent or yourself does the research and makes the phone calls to the bank, makes the phone calls to the attorney. There's a whole process to that. But that's one way. This client of ours picked up about 5 properties in the last 2 years, and they've been great investments. And he goes and he bids and he gets outbid, but he's walked away with 5 of them, and they were great investments for him.
I love that. But he knows his numbers, obviously, because I think that's the other thing is if you don't know your numbers, like it needs to do what you need it to do in order
and that's
for
where,
you to be able to keep going.
That's where we come in as agents. We come in and we tell him exactly what he can get. This is your range. This is what it's worth if you fix it up. And the buyer's job is to understand the repairs and how much they cost. Make sure it's an investment.
Because do you have 10 doors or 10 like rentals, like rental buildings?
I have a big mix of properties. So I have 10 properties.
10 properties. Okay, so there's more doors. I was like, is it 10 doors or it's more than 10 doors?
Yeah. So I have a big mix because when I first started, I was buying multifamilies. Then there's a lot of headaches, a lot of turnovers. I didn't want to put my time and effort into the multifamilies. Started buying single families. Great investments, in my opinion, because you rent them and tenants take care of everything. So they take care of the plowing. Like we just talked about.
Yeah, I love that.
They take care of plowing. They pay the water bill, all the electric bills. They do the landscaping. So I have 4 single families that have been great to me. Never had, literally in 15 years, never had a vacancy for even a week.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because people that rent would love a single family home.
Yeah, true.
The cons to a single family is the cash flow is not as high as multiple doors. And then I actually switched over to mixed use properties where you have commercial on the first floor and then residential on the second. Had really good luck with that because either myself or my wife's business would be on the first floor, and then the tenants would be paying the mortgage, insurance, taxes on the second floor. So there's a big market for that. And then more recently, I've just got into Airbnb properties, I call them. So short-term rentals.
Yeah.
And there's a big market for that. And we really enjoy managing those, and they could be very lucrative.
I like that you have it diversified though, because sometimes people put all their eggs in one basket. I knew someone who really into Airbnb, it was very lucrative. I can see why he got really into Airbnb. But then when the government changed the rules here in Canada, I don't know if it's throughout all of Canada or if it was just BC. I think it was all of Canada. That they said you're only allowed doing Airbnb in your primary residence. So there was all these like apartment buildings that he had Airbnbs in. And when they changed the rule, and then now what? And then when the housing market for the condos had changed as well, there was obviously a large profit loss for those units on top of that. So having your portfolio diversified is obviously important. How do you like having the commercial stuff? I feel like commercial has been a very attractive like investment for people over the last little while.
So I love the commercial mixed use property because I'm a residential guy. I've always been residential. And then when we started building our businesses, my wife has her own business. Having commercial on the first floor and residential on the second was amazing. And one is that you couldn't really get a regular mortgage for a mixed use property. You had to go commercial. So there was not a lot of competition for these properties. So if you have a multifamily home, every investor in the world wants to buy it. You have multiple offers. So these mixed use properties were a hidden gem for a while. Yeah, I'm telling my secrets here, but they were like a hidden gem where most investors would stay away from them because it's a little harder to rent a commercial spot than it is to rent residential. But once you get a commercial tenant in there, they tend to last. They tend to take care of everything. They don't call you every week or every month for an issue, and they tend to pay more. I had really good luck with my commercial mixed use properties. And now more recently, residential mortgages are allowing mixed use if it's a certain percentage of residential. So you can get a regular mortgage now, like a multifamily mortgage on a mixed use property.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's interesting how they change things. Hey, there's actually a change happening here too, where they're allowing like residential properties to be used for like senior care facilities as well, because we don't have enough housing for like seniors and stuff. So they're starting to allow that as well. And I've heard that's actually quite lucrative as well, because again, we just don't have supply and demand.
No.
There is a demand and there is no supply. So now I'm giving away my secrets, my future investment plans. That's so funny. But then on top of that, you said that you also have your brokerage. So all of the investor stuff that we're talking about, that's a separate deal. And then you still have your brokerage that you run. So do you manage your own properties? Like, how do you wear multiple hats exactly? Like,
So I do manage my own properties. I had a property manager in the past and then realized that they would get the first call and then I would get the second call. I was like, why am I paying a property manager when I'm going to get the call anyways?
yeah.
So there are companies that can take care of your properties without the phone call. But for me, for my brokerage, I also own a general contracting company now. So I have the handymen, the plumbers, the electricians, all the general contractors that I need. Yeah, so I do property manage my own properties
Yeah, because
now.
you're
And
going
then
to end up quarterbacking all of the trades anyway at that point. You're like,
yeah,
what's the point of, yeah, that's fair.
yeah. So with my brokerage, the biggest thing that we started doing, I've been trying to do this for 15 years, is I call it curb to close program.
I
And
saw that on your website. Very cool. Okay.
we're all in on this program because I feel like it's a big need in the industry where we will basically prep your home for sale.
Very cool.
Whatever needs to be done, the majority of homes just need to be cleaned, they need to be painted, they need new floors, they need minor fixes. And that's where we come in and we'll actually do that for you quicker, faster, probably better than if a homeowner tries to do it themselves. And then we actually don't charge them anything until the closing, which is awesome for a lot of sellers because a lot of sellers have a ton of equity, but not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily a ton of cash. So a lot of their money is tied up in their homes. So we do the work, and then at the end, at the closing, is when we would get paid on that portion.
Very cool. And so, how long have you been running that program for?
So I tried to do this for 14 years, but I never had the infrastructure. I finally have the right team. So it's been 2 years now. We started out the first year, 2 years ago, we did 7 properties. And then last year we did 18.
Wow.
Um,
Oh my God.
yeah,
That jumped up a
it,
lot. Holy cow.
yeah. And there's one, I'll tell you a really quick story.
Yeah, I love
There's
it.
one, there was an estate that a prior client called me about, and he said that his attorney, he doesn't trust him, and his his mom's house that's been sitting vacant for 5 years is going to be sold for $202,000. And I said, "Whoa, wait a minute! Tell me about the house." It was a ranch in a really nice town in Connecticut. I'm like, that absolutely doesn't sound correct. So we went to the property. I looked at it. It was destroyed. I'm telling you, it was
Mm.
bad. There's 5 years of damage to the house. And she had probably, I think we got rid of 2 dumpster full, 40-yard dumpsters of items in the house.
That's
So
crazy.
again, long story short, I told him, listen, $10,000, we'll clean this property out. There was a little bit of mold. We'll get rid of the mold. We'll cut down all the bushes in the front. The grass was 3 feet high. We'll do a little bit of landscaping. So he said, great, let's do it. 2 weeks later, we had 2 dumpsters full. We had cleared out the front. We put it back on the market. I told him we would get 275. We got 315 in 2 days.
Oh my
So,
God.
yeah. So he had an offer signed, fully signed offer that the attorney wanted him to approve through probate and for 202. And then literally in 2 weeks, we cleaned it out. And then listen, it needed everything. Don't get me wrong. And as an investor myself, I probably would have offered him 220 in the condition it was. But then once you cleaned it up, literally in 2 days, he got 315. We closed 30 days later. So he was ecstatic. Everybody was very happy.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I always say this, I'm like, people will, I don't know if you guys have the store there, so it could not be great for translation, but I was like, people will pay more money for a house that's decorated with urban barn.
Yeah.
And I just, like, the furniture doesn't even come with it. Like, it just has to look nice. And
You need to clean it up. You need to be able to allow people to have a vision.
yeah,
Now, I can look past mold. I can look past items on the ground. I can look past mouse droppings everywhere, chipping paint. I can look past that, but most people can't.
yeah.
And if you're going to keep your property like that, and I joke, I say the word that I never want to hear is as is. Once you hear as is, you're going to leave money on the table.
So much
As an
money on the
investor,
table. Yeah.
as an investor, I love it.
Oh, yeah.
But as when I'm working with a buyer or a seller, you don't want to hear that word. So we come in, we help clean it up and get the most money for their home.
I love that you guys have that as an option, because a lot of times I think people just don't have the bandwidth right now with the way that like the world has been. And I just think that sometimes they leave money on the table, not because they want to, but because they just don't have the like emotional tolerance or bandwidth to just deal with it. I think it's like a really great kind of option that you're giving people. And not only that, again, people don't have the money. A lot of people don't have the money. It's all tied up in their equities. That's super cool. I have heard this only once before, but it was not a program that was exercised very much. And I think it was because the contractors that were actually doing the jobs were not like a in-house type service. So in order to quarterback people who needed to get paid sooner rather than later, because they were own independent contractors, it was a little bit different. So having it in-house, that's actually,
Yeah, it actually helps. And then the program's evolving because now people are taking advantage of, if they have an inspection that they need repairs done, we take care of that. I actually had a deal that was going to fall apart because they had mold in the attic and the seller didn't have any money to pay for it. So we ended up taking care of it. And then again, waiting till the closing to get paid. Like you were saying, people don't have the bandwidth. A lot of times you can't find a contractor to fix a door or repair that ceiling that you let, the leak that you fixed 2 years ago, but the ceiling still has a stain on it. You can't find someone to come over for $100 job. So that's where we come in. My contractors only work on properties that we do curb to close, or my rental properties, or an investment that I'm working on. So we always have someone available.
No, and I think it makes sense when you said you're like, I wanted to do it for a really long time, but I didn't have the infrastructure. And like getting that all in place, obviously there's a ton of moving parts. And the fact that you have the investment properties that you need the maintenance done on, like your guys are probably always busy. So you can have the infrastructure, because if you were doing just one or the other, there might not be enough business for that whole team, I would assume. So yeah, it's cool that you got that all organized. You solved a lot of problems, which is always the way business, always the way you end up putting more money in your pocket in business is the more problems you solve. So I think that is like a really cool program. And how far do you guys go then? Because you're in, like how far of an area would you cover for this, just for anybody who's like listening?
We are licensed in Connecticut and in Rhode Island. So anywhere in Connecticut, we would offer this program too. And then some parts of Rhode Island, near Charlestown, South Kingstown, that's where I actually have my Airbnb properties. So I do have the infrastructure out there to offer this program too.
Amazing. That's so fun. Okay. And then, because I love all the stories. I think stories are the thing that people want to listen to more than anything. So I'm so happy that you were able to share some of that. But we are at our time limit. I don't want to lose all of the retention. So people can find you at Better Living Real Estate on Facebook. I think that you are on LinkedIn, which everybody can just search names for that. But then what was your website? And I'll put it in the show notes too, but.
Yep. Better Living Realty, LLC.com.
LLC.com. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for all the information today. There was so many good pieces. I always feel like even if somebody was able just to pick up like one nugget that was like important and good, or even just like one of the books that we mentioned, it was worth the listen, I hope. Thank you so much for coming today. And I'm going to go read Rich Dad Poor Dad again.
Yes. It's a classic for sure.
That's a wrap on this episode of Real Estate Real Talk.
whether you're an agent building your business or a buyer or seller trying to get the real story. Thanks for being here. If this episode gave you clarity, confidence, or just something to talk about, I'd love for you to follow, rate, and share the show. It helps more people find these conversations. If you have questions or want to connect, head over to SkyleighMcCallum.com or come hang out with me on Instagram. Thanks for listening, and I hope you catch the next episode on Real Estate Real Talk.